Hey, what's up, guys? This is a little bit more of sort of a discussion type video for you today. I've been sort of doing a little bit of thinking, and I'm starting to wonder if there isn't some sort of a, I don't know, like a bias, I guess we would say, against the Deadball era in simulation games. I'll sort of explain myself a little bit. Let's see here. So as we look at the different games that are available, the seasons that are available, and stuff like that. If you take a really sweeping look at all of the possible games out there, you'll notice that you'll see a whole bunch of seasons from especially the 1950s, 60s, and I think these days more and more the 1970s. But there's a good question here as to whatever happened to like the really old seasons. We talk about 1908. Usually for seasons that have a 1908 or that have older seasons like Deadball era seasons, they'll have a 1908 option. But there's not too much to say other than that, unfortunately. And I kind of wonder why. In fact, even when you read a lot of sort of sabermetric writing, a lot of the higher analysis is done starting in 1920 or 1921 instead of starting in 1908. And I'm really puzzled as to why this is the case. So I'll give you an example here really quick. This is the Strat-O-Matic baseball site, which is what I just logged into. If you go look at the seasons they have available, the only Deadball era season they have available is 1911, right? 1911, which, if you know your Deadball era, is actually kind of a hitter's year within the Deadball era, where Cobb hit 420. And was absolutely awesome for the Tigers, although they didn't win the pennant. The Giants were simply amazing, beating out a really good Cubs team by quite a margin. A lot of cool things, of course, to say for the 1911 season, but my biggest question is, why isn't there more? Why don't we have more seasons than just 1911, right? I mean, wouldn't there be like some sort of call out there for different seasons as well from the Deadball era? I was on Delphi the other day, and I saw that people were clamoring for things like the 1919 Strat-O-Matic season, right? How come we don't have that? And so on and so forth. It's one of those sort of things that kind of, really makes me wonder a little bit, and wonder if there isn't some sort of, bias that's going on, or if people, for the most part, just don't care, or what exactly is going on. It's interesting to know. I know that there are some people around who watch this who might have a little bit of idea as to what may or may not take place. If you look at another game, now I know if you look at APBA, they have every single season. Same thing was true of Skeetersoft when they sold cards. You look at Replay Baseball, though, you'll see that the oldest season that they have is 1908. And then you have to jump all the way up to 1928. Now, I know that they're trying to work a little bit more on making more old seasons available. Interesting thing about this 1908 season is that I think this is one of the older, older produced seasons that they have, because they only have the 6x6 pitchers, the 1D6 ballparks. There's no 2D6 ballparks available. None of the sort of cool, fancy things. If you look at, I think 49 is the season that they have first. Yeah, it comes with 6x6 pitchers and 2D6 ballparks, and you can change to tall pitcher cards or the 1D6 ballparks instead, right? This is a sign that 1908, it was created maybe a little while ago. It's possible that people just aren't interested in it and just don't want to buy seasons that old, but I'd be really interested to know sort of what you think about this. Is there a general, lack of interest in these seasons? Do people just not like stuff that old? Maybe some people might think that, the Deadball era doesn't have enough statistics, right? Or something like that is wrong. Or maybe that the type of baseball played was just completely different from baseball today. I mean, we can take a look at the stats, right? I showed some of these yesterday. I mean, even though you're talking about a really low batting average, very low on-base percentage, very low slugging percentage, because it was very defense-heavy, pitching heavy especially, and, very high number of sacrifice hits, it's still basically the same game. One of the things that people forget when we talk about this, especially when we talk about this in terms of normalization and stuff like that, what we tend to forget is that the rules were the same back then that they are today. That's the thing that's important to remember. The rules are exactly the same. The ballparks may have been different in terms of their structure, or in terms of having like factories across the street like there was in Brooklyn, but it's still the same game, right? The rules are the same for the most part, right? Okay, sure, you don't have a designated hitter, and you don't have that stupid ghost runner in the ninth inning rule, and you don't have the stepping off, disengagement rule and all this other crap they've come up with these days, but the essential rules of the ballgame are the same as they are today, right? We can compare players across era because they are playing the same game in ballparks that are very very similar to each other, right? Ballparks then may have had different dimensions, but if you were to go back in a time machine and see it, you would be like, oh, it is different, but it's not that different, right? We can even watch video today and see that, yeah, it wasn't really that different back then. There are little other aspects of the games, maybe some strategy aspects, or maybe some things about the players that actually made it to the major leagues that might better explain why you see those differences. But in terms of like the statistical record, there's more enough statistics here, right? The big thing that's missing is caught stealing, but caught stealing is something that can be, you can use the stats that you already have and you can estimate it, right? Because you know that there's a certain amount of outs and you know that you have records of a certain amount of outs and you have a certain amount of putouts from the catcher, right? Wouldn't be that hard to estimate caught stealing. In fact, interesting thing is that if you go, let's see if I can find this here on the fly while everyone's watching me. If you look at the season averages, you'll notice that there are caught stealing numbers here, mostly estimated for those old seasons, right? So if we look at raw caught stealing numbers, they do show up here for seasons in which we know that no caught stealing statistics were kept, right? And the reason why is because these have been estimated based upon a formula that comes from the catcher's assists and from a couple of other things, number of outs that we have recorded in other places and so on and so forth. So we can guess what this would have been without having the full play-by-play record, right? Caught stealing percentage, therefore, in 1908 is about 45.6%, right? So, I mean, we can guess at this stuff, right? We can get a sort of an estimate as to how high the caught stealing totals were for 1908. You're looking at maybe, it's all the way down here. So 0.92 caught stealing per game, which actually compares favorably to the other Deadball era seasons. That's just for 1908. But we have all of this for this era, right? We could use this information and we could make cards for eras like that if we wanted to, right? It certainly is possible. My big question is, why don't we do this? Why don't we see more of this stuff happening? Why don't we see more of these games coming out with older seasons? Or, again, is it a case of there's just simply no demand and nobody cares about this? Interested to know what you happen to think. I think that there is perhaps a little bit less demand out there for seasons involving players that people don't remember seeing when they were kids. But I think if we did some more research into this and found out about more of these guys, that demand would increase. Just my opinion. But I might be biased. I like the Deadball era. Anyway, there you go. I'll talk with you tomorrow. Let me know what you think below. Bye.